Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Now, as I reported just a few weeks ago, there was a study done that said the number of women who are working in the movie business in the top positions, such as director, producer, writer, cinematographer, etc., had dropped to one of its lowest points in more than a decade. However, we're seeing a real spike in women directors coming up thanks to actresses moving behind the camera. Now, two new ones have popped up, which we'll be discussing today, but so far, of course, Angelina Jolie, I think, has been one of the most prominent examples. She actually put her career largely on hold to pursue this. She's doing Maleficent, of course, but she had In the Land of Blood and Honey, which went largely unnoticed, but still, that allowed her to do this upcoming one about the Olympian who is captured in Japan, and she's working on that right now. So that'll be interesting to see if she can make a little bit more waves there. The Coen brothers wrote that script, so I think that'll put her in a better position. The other person is Cate Blanchett, of course. She has announced she wants to direct a film, and she's moving forward on that. But the two new ones are, okay, so let's start out. Interestingly, I think this is the really surprising one, Elizabeth Banks. She is really at top form with her career. I was very impressed with the trailer that just came out for Walk of Shame. She's, of course, in the Hunger Games franchise. I guess, although her part, I don't know if she'll continue into Mockingjay. From what I've seen, I don't know if she will. But she, of course, has had that. So maybe this is the perfect time for her to move into directing. And she also, of course, is in the Lego Movie doing a voice. I mean, she's really done a lot with her career, but she works extensively behind the camera too. She started a production company with her husband, and they actually produce a lot of content right now, including Pitch Perfect, where she had a cameo. So they produced that film. It was a big success, and the news is that she will direct that sequel. So that's very exciting to see her do that. I think it's a light comedy. I think it's right in her wheelhouse. I think she's going to do really well there, and I think she's setting herself up. It's a sequel, so she doesn't have to worry too much about winning over audiences. The fan base is already there, and hopefully she can get her stars to return. I would assume she could, such as Anna Kendrick, Rebel Wilson. I don't think that their plates are so full right now post that film, despite you would think they would do a little better, but they haven't really had a huge bounce off of it. So I think they can come back, and of course I'm sure that they have a good relationship with Elizabeth Banks, so they probably would want to come back for her. So I think that's very exciting. This is something Elizabeth Banks doesn't need to do. She certainly, as I said, has a lot of opportunities in front of the camera. So I think it's great that she's directing this movie and moving forward with her career behind the camera as well as in front of it. And it's just we've seen actors do like Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio. This is also really good insurance for their futures. When maybe they can't bring in audiences anymore, they'll have built up a great career behind the camera, so they continue to be involved in Hollywood and shaping movie making, and to great extent. Both Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio have films in the Oscar race. Of course, DiCaprio with Wolf of Wall Street, and Brad Pitt produced 12 Years a Slave. So that's the first female director that was announced recently, and the second is Meg Ryan, and this is less exciting for a number of reasons. Actually, somewhat disappointing, I think. One is that, of course, her career, I think, is going very poorly, so she has to direct in order to cast herself, and she will star. Banks isn't going to star in her film. Angelina Jolie does not appear in either of her films. We'll see what happens with Cate Blanchett, but I think, if you're going to direct, you should direct, and you should really commit to that. Some people have maybe speculated that was what hurt maybe Joseph Gordon-Levitt's directorial debut. Christopher Nolan advised him against acting and directing. Some people can pull it off, and I still think Don John turned out very well. It just had a few, I think, script problems, so I really wouldn't say it was his directing. But I think that for Meg Ryan to do this when she can't get any work really just is kind of like, she's like, well, I'll just do it myself. Of course, her old buddy Tom Hanks will be producing, but the other disappointing aspects of it is that it will star her contemporaries, Sam Shepard and Melanie Griffith, but the star of the film is going to be her son, Jack Quaid. Not a big name, not like he's already built some of a career for himself already. It's not like, Bob Dylan's son Jacob or, Jerry Stiller's son, Ben Stiller. Those guys went out and created their own careers, despite, maybe a little bit of a, a count against them for already being, in the industry. I mean, there's always those cries of nepotism, but it's a legit, thing to say here. This is direct nepotism. She's cast her son to star in a film that she is directing. So what is the film about? Well, it's based on a 1943 novel called The Human Comedy. They're renaming it Ithaca. And it basically takes place during World War II, where Jack Quaid, he plays, a young teenage boy, and, not old enough to fight. So his brother gets drafted, and he's left at home to not only care for his widowed mother and, the rest of his family, but also he works as a telegraph messenger. So, of course, that's the perfect opportunity for him to go and, dabble into other people's lives around his town and to see what they're going through in the war. Classic setup for these kind of, melodramatic films. And I think, so the trick here is how well is it done? How is it written? And I just have very little faith in a project that really just seems to be like, let's employ the Ryan family. Of course, Jack Quaid is her son because she was married to Dennis Quaid, if you didn't know that. Sorry if I assumed. So I think you have one case of a woman directing for the right reasons, and I think you have another case of a woman directing for the wrong reasons, or anyone directing for the wrong reasons for that matter. Not cool, Meg Ryan. Not cool. And it's such a shame. I went to see 700 Sundays on Broadway, which was Billy Crystal's one-man show, and it was so wonderful that I decided to rewatch When Harry Met Sally, and I was reminded what a good actress Meg Ryan was, and she was really fantastic. Really, offered something in movies that is you don't see a lot from actresses. Very relatable, yet still very a leading lady. And I think she did a great job, and it's a shame that her career, largely to her own fault, I think, has not worked out for her. All right, so that's the first story of the day. The second story of the day is good news, Captain America fans and Marvel fans in general. Cap 3 is being developed, Captain America 3. Apparently Marvel is so happy with the testing, they're showing it to audiences for Captain America 2. It's my most anticipated comic book movie of the year. I haven't seen any of Guardians of the Galaxy yet, but that after credit scene in Thor: The Dark World made me very nervous for that. But I love the traditional Cold War spy aspects they're applying to Cap 2. I think it's very exciting. I really like that kind of a movie, so I'm excited to see them do that in the comic book genre. So I have very high hopes for the movie and how they're going to maybe show how the spy game has changed. So they're working on 3. It's not official. The directors are set to return. Let's see here. Anthony and Joe Russo, they're brothers. I think so far from the trailer we've seen, they look like they're doing a good job, even though this is their first big action movie. And they're developing a 3rd film. It'll get the official green light if the film does well at the box office, Captain America 2: The Winter Soldier, but I assume it's going to do pretty well, don't you? I guess they're going to see how it does over a couple of weeks. It'll open pretty well, I would assume. So the question I have for you is, what do you want Captain America 3 to be? Because interestingly, they skipped over so many Captain America stories to tell this Winter Soldier story, which has really become one of Cap's only few iconic stories. There really isn't a lot to mine there, a lot of material. So the question is, do they do the death of Captain America next, which was the next storyline after the Winter Soldier? Is that what they should do? Or do you think they should do something original? I would kind of vote for original. I feel that the comic books using those stories. I feel the same way with animated movies, just doing comic book adaptations. It's a bit of a crutch. I would like to see them do an original story. There's definitely original ideas that can be applied there, and then they wouldn't have to be such slaves to the material. And also, it's everybody wins. And we fans comic book readers don't have to be upset when they butcher our favorite stories. So that's what I would like to see, a fresh story. Also, I'm wondering, do you guys think it should continue to be so S.H.I.E.L.D. focused, or do you want to see Captain America strike out on his own? And also, will it be the Captain America Winter Soldier show? I don't want to spoil it for those of you who aren't familiar with that, how that resolves itself. But it'll be interesting. Cap even has trouble staying as the focus of his own comic book, so I hope he can stay the focus of his own movies. And here's hoping that Chris Evans makes the role his own here. I liked his cameo in Thor: The Dark World. I thought he was very good. I'm glad they added a little humor for him, which is where I continue to think Chris Evans excels. And he plays a humorless role here. It's so crazy that's what he was used for. He's really more of a Chris Pratt guy, which is interesting, I guess, because he has more matinee idol looks that they gave him this role instead of, I think, something that was probably a little more suited to his actual personality. All right, so that's the second story of the day. The third story is that Benedict Cumberbatch has landed another role. Yay, he didn't kill his career, even though he came awfully close. It's not a fun role, though, which I feel is a shame. I just watched the second episode of Sherlock Season 3. So much fun. He's so good at comedy. It's really, I think, one of his strong points. He's very witty, good British wit, and so Hollywood continues not to utilize that, as you're about to see. It's a film called Blood Mountain. Let's hope it does as much for him as Cold Mountain did for Renee Zellweger, won her an Oscar. Where is Renee Zellweger? So Benedict Cumberbatch will star in a movie called Blood Mountain, and the setup is he plays a private military contractor. Interesting casting right there. In the field, in the Middle East, with his covert ops team on a special mission for I assume the U.S. government, and his team is killed. So it leaves just him and one of the world's most wanted terrorists, and he has to escort that terrorist across hostile terrain to bring him to justice. That's what the synopsis says. So I think you're going to have a lot of soul searching, a lot of the terrorists being like, you sold your soul for a profit, you're a mercenary, kind of idealism versus, capitalism, all those good things that I think you would expect from that kind of a movie that have to be done very well. It's very tricky to pull that kind of stuff off. But again, I don't think this is really a role for Benedict Cumberbatch. I like casting him in this kind of a role because at least it's something different, but I don't think it suits his persona as an actor. Just as I said Chris Evans, I think, is a comedic actor, I think Benedict Cumberbatch is a surprisingly comedic actor. It's funny how many of these comedic actors get shoehorned into these leading man roles as soon as someone says they're sexy. You can have a funny, sexy guy, just like you can have a funny, sexy woman. I think it's funny that Hollywood just cannot understand that. It's just hilarious. Elizabeth Banks is very funny, and I think pulls off being both funny and attractive. So Benedict Cumberbatch, there's no hope for him. Apparently, there's no comedic roles for him to get, so he's stuck doing another dramatic role. I hope he can do it. It's interesting. I think I wish he was staying away from this political stuff. He's so political in his personal life, and of course, he just did the Fifth Estate. I don't think you want to get labeled with that. Separation, of course, in America, supposedly of church and state. I think there should be separation of state and Hollywood. They're just supposed to entertain, and I think whenever an actor starts to get on the soapbox, it's just really tricky. All right, so it also will be directed by Sergei Bodrov. He directed Mongol, very good movie, even though I don't believe they ever released the end of it. Don't tease a sequel or build your whole movie around a sequel unless you know for sure it's going to happen. But then he also directed the upcoming Seventh Son. I believe that's the Julianne Moore, Jeff Bridges movie that keeps getting pushed around and pushed back. It's maybe it's just caught up in an unfortunate divorce between Warner Brothers and Legendary, but it's not making that movie look. It's not doing that movie any favors. All right, so that's the third story of the day. Now on to the viewer question. I think this is a fun one. Okay, it says, question, Grace. Oh my goodness, I didn't copy who wrote it. Let me see if I have it down here who wrote it. Yes, sorry. Okay, Dominic Samaru. So Dominic Samaru says, question, Grace. I love your show. Thank you, Dominic. And I'm curious about your opinion on gender equality in film. I care about that, Dominic. So he says, do you think that men and women should compete for the same acting awards? Great question. You're not the first to ask it. After all, the directors do. Totally true. I know that the awards are supposed to be equal, but we all know the most important awards go last, and usually the male award goes last, and I don't find that fair. Very cool of you, Dominic. I agree with that. I think that is true. I think the male awards are kind of viewed a little bit better. Also because those are just more competitive categories. The lack of women's roles, even still today with a very good year, I think make the categories less exciting. Because, I think people are excited about Sandra Bullock and Gravity, but I think that's maybe about it. Maybe Amy Adams a little bit for American Hustle. I don't think people are that excited for Cate Blanchett, but a lot of people are very excited about the Best Actor with, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Leonardo DiCaprio, Matthew McConaughey. I think that's creating a lot of heat in that category. So you should also blame the films that these people are nominated for in the roles that are available to women. Still, even showing up is a problem here. And so Dominic goes on to say, I know the Grammys have blended some of their gender-specific awards recently, but now there are less people getting recognition. Perhaps the Oscars could still split the award between drama and comedy musical instead of gender. Well, he's saying like the Golden Globes do. What do you think? Thanks. Smiley face. Love the smiley face. All right. I love your question, Dominic. And my answer would be, yes, I agree they should split it by genre, but not just drama and then comedy musical. I think they should maybe have like an action award as well, because I think we're all sick and tired of action movies, which, by the way, how hypocritical is it of the movie business when that's become what they're pushing the most, that they don't do anything to honor those films in the Oscars. I think that, and especially since you're starting to get more people, like Martin Scorsese dabbled with 3D with Hugo, but then you have Alfonso Cuarón here making Gravity, and James Cameron made Avatar. Maybe he'll just change his name to James Avatar. He's like, that's where all my money comes from. But yeah, so I think that, that will help maybe people take these genres more seriously to have them get some recognition at the end of the year. So yeah, that's what I would totally agree with you. I would totally get rid of the male-female separation. I mean, we're all competing for the same ticket money, right? I mean, you're not asked to, what male-based movie, what female-based movie would you like to see? So I think as long as you're competing on an even playing field monetarily, you should also in terms of, critical recognition. So I agree. But again, not just the way the Golden Globes does it. I would maybe pick, divide it up a few. I mean, I think a lot of people would be interested in a horror category. Just, some way to split it up. Now, let's not go crazy and just shatter this into a million categories, but I think you could do a good number and, maybe change what gets televised, what doesn't. I think the Oscars need a lot of work as a show, but that's a whole other conversation. But yes, I agree with you, Dominic, and that's how I would divide it up as well. And as far as people getting less recognition, I think we just have to learn to live with that and to compete on the same level. And also, what good is that recognition if it's because your field is handicapped? All right, so that's today's morning movie news. Thank you for tuning in. Write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories, the viewer question, and anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.